Alright, hey guys, On Game here, back in another video. I'm going to be doing another collection video for you guys. And this is a video that I've been waiting a long time to make. As you can see, I'm going to be showing you guys my Tony Hawk collection again. But not only that, I have some pretty incredible news. So if you've been watching my channel for the last, I'd say, couple years at least, you would know that I've been actively pursuing a full set of getting every Tony Hawk game. Minus the Robomoto ones. That's a big exception. None of the Robomoto ones. I don't want any of those. Only the games developed by Neversoft and the Vicarious Visions 1 and 2 remake, and that's it. Well, I'm happy to say, guys, I think my collection's pretty much complete now. It isn't everything. I am still missing a lot of PC and Mac versions, but I've said also on the channel before that I would like to own those, but I more likely won't because, well, some of them are just really hard to find and quite expensive. But I am happy to say I do now have every console and handheld version of every Tony Hawk game, at least all the good ones. This is pretty much all of them. So I would say that my full set is basically complete now. Really insane, like, putting all this stuff together. But yeah, so I've been collecting Tony Hawk games for easily over a decade now. And I started pursuing a full set around 2 and a bit years ago, I think, is when I decided I was going to go for the full set. And yeah, it's basically done now, which is pretty surreal. But yeah, this is everything I got. I will be going through everything in greater detail later on. But yeah, it's truly insane. Like, when you see all this stuff like put together, yeah, it really goes to show just how massive this whole collection is. And there's like some loose games I've got here as well. So yeah, guys, so this is basically my entire full set of Tony Hawk games. And without further ado, let's go through everything one by one, shall we? This should be quite fun. So starting things off, we have the game that started it all, the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. So we got it on PS1, Sega Dreamcast, Game Boy Color, Nintendo 64, another copy for the N64, which is actually the American version, and the Nokia N-Gage. So yeah, so this is every version of the first Pro Skater, or Tony Hawk Skateboarding, as it was known in Europe. The reason for the name change is because they thought that Pro Skater would make people think it's an ice skating game, even though you clearly see Tony Hawk on the cover with a skateboard. I mean, it's ridiculous, but that's basically the reason why they changed the name. The reason why I have the American N64 copy was this is actually not technically part of the full set, even though it is a Tony Hawk game. I literally brought this just as a display piece, pretty much, because I just love how it looks with the blue cartridge. Us Europeans, we basically got screwed. We just had the normal grey cart for Tony Hawk games. But in America, they had different colours for Pro Skater 1, 2, and 3. The N64 in general just had a bunch of different coloured cartridge games, and I think they look amazing. You know, it's just sort of a shame that we didn't get it in this country. But yeah, that's the only reason why I had the blue cartridge, was pretty much just a display piece. It's not actually part of the overall full set. But just ignoring that, I do have every single version of Pro Skater 1. There was no PC version or anything like that. It was only on consoles. So yeah, and all of these games are fully complete. Well, except obviously the 2 loose ones, which I bought these 2 loose because they're just a lot cheaper than getting the boxes. But yeah, so that's every version of Pro Skater 1. Now let's move over to Pro Skater 2. So once again, this is every version of the game that was released. So we've got the PS1 version, Sega Dreamcast, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, PC, and Pro Skater 2X for the original Xbox, which was actually a North American exclusive version of Tony Hawk 2. And it's a shame that we didn't get this, because this is basically the ultimate version of Pro Skater 2. It's got all the levels from the first game as well, plus like 5 additional levels that were brand new to this game specifically. And yeah, and it just looks and performs the best out of all different versions. But yeah, it only came out in North America, which is such a shame. So yeah, oh, actually, this isn't actually every version of Pro Skater 2. I just remembered there is also a Mac version, but that one is really hard to find and also quite expensive. I had a look on eBay fairly recently, and I can only find 1 copy for sale. And would you believe it was goddamn 40 quid? And I'm just like, no, I'm not paying 40 quid for a Mac game. You can screw off. Other than that, this is every version of Pro Skater 2. Again, I've just got loose copies for N64 and Game Boy Color. I would like to get boxes, especially for the Game Boy Color one. But with N64, I only collect loose cards anyway, because it's a lot cheaper. But yeah, I would like to get the Game Boy Color one box at some point. I've got the Game Boy Advance one box, as you can see. It does have the manual. All of them are complete, except for obviously the loose games. And this one didn't come with a manual initially, and also this one's missing a manual. But yeah, but these three at the top are all complete. So yeah, so now moving on to Pro Skater 3. My favourite game in the series, and my favourite game of all time, actually. So we've got it for PS2, the original Xbox, GameCube, PC, PS1, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Advance, and Game Boy Color. Now, if you're a subscriber of mine, you would know that recently I actually did a whole video on my channel where I basically played like every version of Pro Skater 3. I played a little bit of each one, did a quick like 2-minute run in the first level of the game. And yeah, that was a really fun video to make, actually, just jumping between all different versions. Again, just like with Pro Skater 2, I am missing the Mac version, but again, like that one is really, really hard to find. I would love to own it, trust me, I really would, so I can say my collection's fully complete, but realistically, I don't think I will, just because of how hard to find it is. Obviously, the crown and jewel of this collection is the N64 version. This was by far the most expensive Tony Hawk game that I've ever purchased. This cost me a crap ton. I had to import it from America on eBay. But yeah, really, really happy to have this. As some of you may know, this was actually the last game ever released for the N64. And because of that, the price of it has gone like insane nowadays. And it also only came out in North America as well, just like with Pro Skater 2X. But yeah, really, really happy to have that. And yeah, so that's all my Pro Skater 3 games. Now let's move on to Pro Skater 4. So I've got it for PS2, original Xbox, GameCube, Tapwave Zodiac, PS1, and Game Boy Advance. So the one that definitely stands out the most out of all of these is definitely the Zodiac version here. A lot of you probably don't even know what the hell a Tapwave Zodiac is, but basically it was a handheld system from the early 2000s that was mostly meant to compete with the Nokia N-Gage, more so like the Game Boy Advance. It didn't really do particularly well, which is probably why you've never heard of it. And yeah, very few games were ever released for the thing. But it did get a port of Pro Skater 4, which was basically a port of the Game Boy Advance version. So if you played on the GBA, you basically played it on the Zodiac as well. But yeah, this is definitely the most obscure Tony Hawk game that I have. And also as well, what's funny about this is that yeah, the game comes on basically a little SD card. Like, look at all this wasted space inside the case right here. Like, they decided to put it in a DVD style case, despite the fact it comes on a little tiny SD card like that. I don't know, I just find that so funny. But yeah, this was another really expensive one as well. I had to pay like 60 quid for this on eBay. But yeah, but just really happy to have. I'm trying to think, there was a Mac version of Pro Skater 4 as well, which I don't have. I'm trying to think. I think there was a PC one as well, but I honestly don't remember. But if there is, I definitely don't have that one. But like I said, time and time again, my main goal was just console and handheld, and mainly the Neversoft games. That was my main goal since day one. Even though I do have the PC versions of Pro Skater 2 and 3, I ultimately decided I was going to go for the PC versions, but I decided that after finding out how rare and expensive some of those were, I decided to completely give up on that. So yeah, but this is every version of Pro Skater 4, more or less. And these are all complete in box, except for obviously the one loose game. But anyway, moving on to Tony Hawk's Underground, the first story-driven game in the series. So again, got PS2, original Xbox, classics released for the original Xbox, GameCube, and Game Boy Advance. The reason why I have two for the original Xbox is because one's my original copy that I brought way back in the day, and the other one I brought a couple years ago or so, mainly to replace this one because I'm not a big fan of owning like classics or platinum hits or anything like that. So I just wanted a normal copy, but I didn't want to get rid of my old one because I've had that one for such a long time. So that's the reason why I have two for the original Xbox. But yeah, but this is every version of Underground except the PC version, and this version specifically is the main reason why I ultimately decided not to get PC and Mac ports, because the PC version of Thug 1, for whatever reason, is like the rarest, most hard to find Tony Hawk game like in existence. Like, for starters, it only came out in Australia and New Zealand, from what I've heard. For some reason, it only came out in those two countries. And yeah, it is insanely hard to find. A lot of people probably don't even know they made a PC version of Fug 1 because of how, like, just obscure and rare it is. That was the reason why I decided not to go down that route, because I was like, yeah, I'm just never going to find this. Because trust me, just try and look it up, you will not find a copy. And if I'll be surprised if you do, because it is such a rare release. So that alone completely turned me off from going down the PC route completely. But yeah, but other than that, this is every version of Fug 1. I mean, if you want to be technical, there is also like the 2-pack version for the Game Boy Advance, which also comes with Kelly Slayer. But I never wanted to collect like any of the variants or anything. Just, you know, the main versions of each game was perfectly fine for me. You know, I didn't want to get all different regional versions and all that. I didn't want to go down that route. Again, they're all complete except for the obvious loose cart down there. I would like to get like some boxes for some of my loose Game Boy Tony Hawk games, but I just find that Game Boy Advance boxes on their own just tend to be quite expensive nowadays. But I would love to get them all boxed, even though, just like N64, I do mainly collect loose for Game Boy Advance, but, you know, it is what it is. I'm happy to at least have the game. But anyway, now let's move on to Underground 2, which I've got for PS2, Xbox, GameCube, PSP, and Game Boy Advance. Now, the PSP version is special because this one actually has, like, extra content that isn't in any of the other versions. It's got some additional levels. Yeah, 4 exclusive levels to this version. Well, they're not so much exclusives anymore because they were eventually in American Wasteland. But yeah, just bonus content in that one. And the Game Boy Advance version, I actually do have the box for this, but the box is in such terrible condition. Plus, I've actually lost it somehow. I actually don't know where I even put it, which is a shame because it came with the manual as well. It was one that I brought years ago, and to be honest, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Because the box is in such terrible condition and has always been that way, even when I got it. Why I brought that copy in the first place, I generally don't know. It was so fucking long ago. I don't know what my thought process was at the time. But yeah, but that's the reason why I just got the cartridge there. But yeah, I do have the box manual for that. Once again, don't have the PC version, which that one's also quite pricey. Thankfully, actually did have a European release and wasn't, like, you know, exclusive to Australia or whatever. But yeah, but other than that, this is every version of Fug 2. Now, let's move on to American Wasteland / American Skateland. Yeah, I decided to include both of them because American Skateland is more or less the handheld version of American Wasteland, despite having a different name. PS2, original Xbox, GameCube, Xbox 360, and then for Skateland, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo DS. So yeah, once again, missing the PC version. Like I said, I wasn't going for the PC versions. So yeah, American Wasteland is one of my favorites, man. I absolutely love this game. And the handheld version is pretty good as well. And all of these are fully complete, which is good. And I've actually got a box for the Game Boy Advance version this time around. So yeah, so now let's move on to Project 8. And I'm happy to say this is in fact every single version. Got PS2, original Xbox, 360, PS3, and PSP. So yeah, so no PC version, which I find quite bizarre, and no DS ports either, or Game Boy Advance. The PSP version was the only handheld port. Yeah, I don't know why that was, but Project 8 was basically just a console game. But yeah, not really much to say. Project 8 was an alright game. I didn't like it nowhere near as much as like the PS2 games. But it was good though, don't get me wrong. They obviously went in a more like realistic direction, especially in terms of like the gameplay. I can definitely see why it's a divisive game in the Tony Hawk community, because it is quite different to the earlier games. But now, let's move on to Downhill Jam. Yeah, you probably thought that we were going to do Proving Ground next, didn't you? But no, in between Project 8 and Proving Ground, another studio, Toys for Bob, made a spin-off game called Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam. And basically, as the name suggests, it was a downhill racing game. And it was pretty good, honestly. So this is every version that was released. So Nintendo Wii, PS2, Nintendo DS, and Game Boy Advance. Again, no PC version or PSP or anything, just these 4. And yeah, it's quite an underrated game, actually. If you're a big fan of Tony Hawk and you haven't played Downhill Jam, I'd recommend it. You know, it's quite different because it is mainly a racing game, but it still has that, you know, fast pace, you know, satisfying trick-based gameplay that Tony Hawk's always been known for, but just in a racing setting, pretty much. And yeah, it's a pretty good game. It has like a cartoony sort of aesthetic to it. Yeah, it's a fun game. What was I going to say, really? And yeah, okay, now let's finally move on to Proving Ground, the last entry made by Neversoft. So this is every version. So we've got PS2, Xbox 360, Wii, PS3, and Nintendo DS. Once again, no PC port. They just completely abandoned PC at this point. For whatever reason, they just couldn't be bothered to get another studio to port over or anything. And also, strangely, no PSP port, despite there being a PS2 one, and I'm sure they could have easily just ported that over onto the PSP, but no, they didn't bother. Only DS if you want a handheld version. And Proving Ground overall was just alright, I guess. I mean, it was mainly just like, you know, Project 8, but with like a new city or something like you'd roam around in. I had the same gameplay as Project 8. I wasn't really the biggest fan of it, but again, it's still a fun game. Now, let's move on to the last game, which will be Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2, the 2020 Vicarious Visions remake. So got it for PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PS5, and Xbox Series X, which also contains the Xbox One version, so I've technically got 2 for Xbox One, but yeah, so this is every version of the game that was released physically. There was a PC port, but there was no physical release of that because, well, physical PC games just flat out don't exist anymore. But yeah, so this is currently the newest Tony Hawk game as of, well, me filming. Tony Hawk did say last year that he's working with Activision on an unannounced project, so we'll just have to wait and see what that could be. My guess is that it's more likely going to be the 3 and 4 remake, which was supposed to come out. You know, Vicarious Visions were working on it, but ultimately Activision just decided to cancel it for seemingly no reason. Yeah, so hopefully that actually does finally come out. Although me personally, as cool as a 3 and 4 remake would be, especially considering like how much I love Pro Skater 3, I would like to see a new Tony Hawk game rather than a remake. A remake would still be cool, but I want to see a Pro Skater 6, personally. I want to see an all-new Tony Hawk game made by Vicarious Visions, you know. Take the core gameplay from the Pro Skater 1-2 remake, which is honestly probably like Tony Hawk at its best. You know, I'd say this and American Wasteland are probably like the 2 best games in terms of their gameplay. Yeah, just take the gameplay from this and just make an all-new Tony Hawk game. Like that's what I would like to see. 3 or 4 remake would be cool, but just like, you know, I mean, this generation's just been nothing but remakes and remasters, you know. I mean, just kind of getting sick and tired of just seeing all the same old, you know, just old games just constantly like being re-released. You know, I want to see something new. I want to see a brand new Tony Hawk game, you know. Give us a true Pro Skater 5. Give us the game that Pro Skater 5 really fucking should have been, instead of the travesty that piece of shit was. And that's the reason, by the way, why I don't collect the Robomoto games, is because they're all dog shit. Honestly, Robomoto, they took over the franchise after Neversoft, and they just completely fucking destroyed it, you know. They released the Tony Hawk Ride and Shred, Pro Skater HD and Pro Skater 5, and they were all just awful. They were all just awful games. And yeah, and I don't really want awful games in my collection, you know, which is why I avoid those games like the freaking plague. But yeah, so anyway, this is where Tony Hawk currently stands. And also, just for the fun of it, as a little bonus, I've also got all of the Activision O2 spin-off games as well. Activision O2 was basically a sub-brand that Activision introduced in the early 2000s. And basically, after the success of Tony Hawk, they decided that they would basically publish other extreme sports games that would use the Tony Hawk game engine, but for various other extreme sports. So yeah, and hence we got Activision O2, and these are all the spin-off games, I guess, of Tony Hawk. So we've got Matt Hoffman's Pro Remakes 1 and 2, Sean Palmer's Pro Snowboarder. This one's actually a custom cover. This game doesn't actually exist. I'll get back to that in a minute. Pro Snowboarder for Game Boy Color, Pro Snowboarder for Game Boy Advance, Kelly Slayer's Pro Surfer, Wakeboarding Unleashed featuring Sean Murray, and MTX Moto Tracks, which wasn't actually released under Activision O2, but initially started development as an Activision O2 game, which is why it's here. And this one here is quite interesting because this is actually a game that was supposed to come out, but ultimately got cancelled. Yeah, there was going to be a sequel to Sean Palmer's Pro Snowboarder that was supposed to come out back in 2003. It was actually being developed by Treyarch. Yes, that Treyarch that made Call of Duty now. They were going to make it, and it ultimately got cancelled, which is such a shame because the first Pro Snowboarder is such a phenomenal game. I've been telling people this for the longest time, but I think Pro Snowboarder is honestly, like, by far the most underrated snowboarding game of all time. And I would even go as far to say the most underrated PS2 game, because it is basically Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but on a snowboard. Like, I don't understand why no one talks about this game, because it is so phenomenal. And yeah, and it's such a shame, you know, knowing that there was going to be a sequel and ultimately got cancelled. And one day, I decided just for the fun of it, I'd make my own custom cover for this unreleased game. I took this cover from a Activision O2 booklet that came with, I believe, Pro Skater 4 in North America. It was basically a little booklet advertising like all different Activision O2 games that were coming out. And Pro Snowboarder 2 was actually featured in there, despite never being released. It was obviously before the game was cancelled. And it actually featured, it's quite small, but it actually featured what would have been the official box art for the game. And that's what this is. This is what the game would have looked like had it actually released. This is what the actual cover would have looked like, pretty much. And what I did was I decided to take that, stretch the image out, and basically put it on a original Xbox template. If you look up close, you can see like just how like blown up it is, because originally like the image was like probably that big or something. So I expanded it to fill a full like, you know, DVD case. And then for the side here, I basically just took the American PS2 spine art and just added a little 2 at the end there. And then the back is literally just the back for the same Activision O2 booklet that this cover came from. And I put available 2003 at the top there. And basically, I made this look like a, what would you call it? Like one of those like pre-order game boxes, you know, like you would see like, say like on the shelves of like a, I don't know, GameStop or wherever. And you would see like empty cases on the shelf for a game that's about to come out, and it would say like pre-order here. Yeah, that's what I basically made this look like, because it already had a rating pending, you know, thing in the corner there. It would have taken too much effort to do like proper back artwork, so I decided that I would make it look like a pre-order box. I made my own Pro Snowboarder 2 pretty much, just as a one of one, the only one in the world. There actually is a disc inside. It's actually a demo disc for Pro Snowboarder. And there's also a little tiny version of the same cover as well, which was actually like a printing mistake. When I was done making this cover and I was gonna, you know, print it out, initially I got like the dimensions of it wrong, and I ended up printing a version of it that was like too small, as you can see. But I didn't want to like get rid of it, so I decided to just keep it in here. But yeah, I'm really proud of how this turned out, actually. Just a fun thing I made one day when I was bored. I was like, you know what? I'm annoyed that there doesn't exist a physical copy of Pro Snowboarder 2 because the game was never released. Let me make my own. Let me at least pretend like this game actually released. You know, so I could put it on the shelf and everything. And yeah, that's exactly what I did. So with all that being said, guys, that's basically my entire Tony Hawk collection. And holy shit, look at all this crap I have to put away after I'm done filming this video. I don't even know what else to say. My Tony Hawk full set is basically complete. Does this mean I'm now done collecting Tony Hawk games? Mostly. Like I said, those PC versions and Mac and all that, if I ever find them for a good price, I'll definitely buy them. And of course, if a new Tony Hawk game comes out, I'll definitely buy that. But for the most part, yeah, I'm pretty much done with collecting Tony Hawk games, because I've pretty much got them all at this point. So yeah, so with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, let me know down in the comments, what is your favorite Tony Hawk game? And what is your experience with the franchise? You know, did you grow up with it initially? And also, how many Tony Hawk games do you own in your collection? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and peace. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Until then, take care now.